Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everyone. Welcome back to Away and Awake. And just a quick impromptu update on a dream. I will definitely be doing this one up in more detail and a little bit more polished, but I'm wanting to try to start a practice of just trying to get stuff out more quickly to get myself in the rhythm of really thinking about the dreams and making them a priority. I make a lot of content for another channel, and far more than I do here. And despite the fact that this is the channel that I'm, more interested in when it comes to it. So I woke up this morning at 5 from a very powerful dream, a strange one. It was not a typical non-ordinary dream. So I most often will talk about non-ordinary dreams on here, and what that usually means, what it usually entails, is some very complex dynamics that go far beyond regular dreams and indeed regular waking consciousness, more akin to some sort of psychedelic experience. So there'll be altered physics, there'll be distortions of time, there'll be the sense of external locuses of consciousness, or other weird overlaid consciousness, and extremely intense sensations, physical sensations, emotions, ideas that are just infinitely complex. So really, really hyper experiences. And this was not one of those. And also, amongst all of that, I'd usually be lucid as well. But this was none of those things, and I wasn't lucid either, as far as I remember. And normally, I think when you're lucid, you do remember. So I think maybe I was slightly lucid at certain points because I was semi-waking up from time to time. But otherwise, I don't think I was. And all of those features I just described weren't there, but the tone of the dream and the concept of it was very powerful. So, and there are bits and pieces I don't remember, but I have pretty decent recall of this, which is good. My recall recently has not been so good. Now out comes the sun. Excuse me if I'm blinding you. So I was with a group of people who I think were primarily my family, brother, sister, mum, and also a woman who I took to be a date or a romantic interest of some sort. And we were going to a kind of restaurant. I say this in very loose terms because it was no normal restaurant. And we had a guide with us, this person who I feel was a man, definitely had a kind of vibe of being foreign, so dark skin, probably South American, which will tie in with where we're going here. And we were led to this underground cave, and in the cave, it was kind of, the bottom of the cave was filled with water, so it's kind of like an underground lake, I guess, or pond. It was fairly shallow, but deep enough that you could be somewhat submerged in it. And kind of rocks and things jutting out of it, and some plants and trees. It was quite dark. And we kind of set ourselves up in there. Like I say, it was supposed to be a restaurant, but there weren't any tables or anything like that. We were just kind of perched in the water, on the rocks, etc., and in kind of various places around this space. And I was immediately next to this woman that was my kind of date. And I knew what this was all about, and I'd kind of initiated this whole thing. I'd brought everyone here. And what it was that you could order from the menu, although there was no staff or menu, but you could order access to the spirit of ayahuasca. For those who are not familiar, ayahuasca is a psychedelic substance. It's a combination of plants which are brewed up into a kind of tea that you drink and induces a psychedelic experience. It's native to the Amazon, various different peoples within the Amazon. And the idea goes that the ayahuasca plant has a spirit which kind of visits you when you have one of these psychedelic experiences with it. And it's typically seen as a feminine energy, and often might take physical form within the trip's experience as some sort of snake or insect or some sort of reptile. So in this place, the idea was that it wasn't so much you were doing an ayahuasca trip, but it was that you could order access to effectively be visited by this spirit. And I was wanting this to happen, and I wanted to particularly demonstrate this to this woman who had not been exposed to this before, and who I thought it was important for her to see this. And I spent some time in the dream explaining a bunch of the kind of folklore around this to the people. And then we were waiting for it to kind of happen. And the way that this kind of, normally you'd refer to it as Mother Ayahuasca, but in this case it didn't have anything like a feminine or motherly vibe about it. The way that it emerged was actually as at least one, but possibly two crocodiles that were under the water and just vaguely recognizable. So we were kind of lying there, or kind of perched backwards a little bit, and we started to kind of notice that there were slight ripples in the water, and maybe just the very top of the head of a crocodile. And it was a very kind of murky vibe. Like it was quite a cunning thing that was going on. It was trying to remain hidden, but also make itself known. And it was very scary. It was simultaneously scary and exactly what I was wanting. So I was kind of, I was aware this is it. This is how the spirit is presenting itself right now, and we can trust this process, and we can trust that it's not going to attack us, which was kind of the vibe that it was, the whole scene was giving off. But simultaneously, there was a genuine fear that it actually might. And anyone who's been involved with psychedelics, and maybe particularly things like ayahuasca, you might be able to relate to that idea, that it's not always pleasant and it's not always benevolent. And so, but being that I was the person that was introducing everyone, I was trying to kind of, hold myself together and reassure everyone that it was fine, while simultaneously really feeling a lot of fear. But I think that was being overwhelmed by the sense of, no, this will be fine. And eventually one of these crocodiles, there might have only been one, I'm not sure, but one of them somehow kind of emerged out of the water and right up into a kind of really intimate contact with us in a way that's hard to describe. It was physically there, but the intimacy of the connection wasn't that it was like just kind of, draped all over us. It was some sort of like emotional or metaphysical kind of intimacy that it was generating. Still scary though, so it wasn't as if we were being flooded with infinite love or anything like that. And I think it even had the texture. There was a physical texture of this whole experience, which was that you'd imagine the scales, the wet scales of a crocodile would feel like. And there's a lot of little subtleties in here that I can't really put my finger on. But the kind of culmination of this part of the dream, of our interaction with ayahuasca, was that the crocodile was very intensely engaging with me, and it was causing my body to really kind of arc and become very taut. And in particular, my fingers, I remember very clearly seeing or pushing myself against the wall or the ceiling of this cave, and my fingers being very, very rigidly taut and kind of buckled over like that, kind of pressing into something to the point that they were like kind of bending. It was very, very pointed. The focus was on the hands, and the rest of my body was kind of similarly taut. And again, while this was happening, I kind of had the dual state of fear and reverence, and was very aware that this was going to be impressing upon the people around me that this was no joke, and this was completely outside of what they would have expected. And the experience kind of ended. I don't know exactly how it came apart there, but it ended. And my family were keen to go. They were I think they were kind of upset and annoyed at the whole thing. It wasn't even that they were freaked out by it. They were just like, this is enough silliness kind of thing. And but the woman I was with seemed to be appropriately impressed by what was going on, and we went over to another corner of the cave, and I think the guide was there or was supposed to be there but had gone. But at this point, this was more or less the end of the dream, but there was now a new character in the dream, which where we went over to, there was a kind of makeshift narrow bed, and lying face down on that was an old man, maybe around 70, and he was apparently part of our group, or we knew him. In fact, I think he was family, but he hadn't factored into the dream at all until now. I didn't know anything about him. And one of my parents, I think, was saying, this is enough for him now. We need to get him out of here. The feeling that it was particularly too much for him because of his age. There's only so much a 70-year-old can take of this kind of this intensity. And with that, the dream ended. Now, I did record this in the night, and I think there might be a few more details that I'm forgetting right now. So I look forward to doing this in a more thorough piece of writing and maybe reciting it for the channel. But I thought I would at least get it out there and just kind of get my brain in the dream space and ticking over. I think they say that, the more you engage with your dreams, the more they kind of bring to your experience. And I'd also like to have a bit of an uptick in dream activity, because lately it's been, I think it's still a lot more unusual and intense than the average person, and every couple of weeks I'll have a particularly intense experience. But it's not the heights that it was some years ago. That might not be the worst thing, because having these dreams regularly can be quite disruptive of sleep, but also being that they're so intense, whether positive or negative, I think they're quite taxing on the nervous system. Nonetheless, I do enjoy them. So hopefully getting this out to you will induce a bit more of it in me, and of course in you. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this little ramble. I look forward to speaking to you all again. By all means, comment or subscribe if you'd like to engage in a conversation around this, and I'll see you again soon for another waffle.